Only a few weeks are left in the 89th legislature. The deadline is right around the corner, and some great pieces of legislation are making their way through the process. With thousands of bills filed, we understand it can be hard to get a good look into what your state representatives are up to. That's why we invite them here to TPPF and give them an opportunity to shine a light on some of their favorite bills. And today, we've got a good one for you. I'm Ammon Blair, and this is The Layout. My name is Ammon Blair, Senior Fellow for Border Security here at TPPF. Unmanned aircraft systems, or drones, pose a growing threat to our southern border security. Currently, only 4 federal departments, whether that is the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, or the Department of Energy, can legally counter these threats. State and local authorities, who often have the most immediate knowledge of conditions on the ground, lack the legal authority to respond. HCR 98 aims to address this critical gap by urging Congress to enhance coordination among all levels of government and potentially expand counter-drone authorities to state and local agencies. To understand this resolution better, we're joined by Representative Plesa. Representative Plesa, welcome to The Layout.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on the show.
Man, this is exciting. Can you please explain to our audience what counter-unmanned aircraft, or UASs, are and why they're becoming increasingly important for border security?
Absolutely. So, even though I represent Collin County, which is closer to the Oklahoma border than it is to our southern border, I have really had conversations with my constituents, and border security is very important, whether you're in McKinney or you're in McAllen. And we have seen an infiltration of these unmanned aircrafts, these drones, being used by cartels, organized crime, to survey our border, to help bring illicit drugs, human trafficking, even weapons across the border. And so it is critical for us to be on top of these advancing technologies and create a system of counter drones on our border, creating a 21st century border wall, essentially.
Now, your resolution highlights that states are currently prevented from engaging drone detection or mitigation activities. How does this limit Texas's ability to secure its own border? Well,
it was very interesting. I've been down to the border. I've been down to where Operation Lone Star is, and different places around, McAllen and the RGV. And one thing that I notice in conversations is that sometimes these areas might have one drone helping survey around 200 miles, right? And that's just unacceptable. As you said in the opening of your layout, there are only 4 agencies that can coordinate for us on the national side. And so it's our local entities. It's the people that grew up there, that have been working there for years, that really understand the topography of the landscape. And that's why this HCR is so important, because it's going to help us coordinate our state and our national entities into one area, essentially, so that we can be very strategic and be very targeted in our defense.
Now, recently there was actually a threat made on law enforcement along the border. The cartels, now that the Trump administration has come in and there's been more enforcement, one of the cartel leaders south of the Rio Grande Valley sector, which you were in, made a threatening statement saying that they were going to start utilizing bomb-laced drones against our own law enforcement. Can you explain that type of situation and how that's a threat to us and our law enforcement?
Well, it's a threat because it's going to hurt. Basically, these communities are underfunded. These communities are under attack. And what we haven't really been paying attention to is the advancement of all these different types of drones. I think a lot of times people think of a drone as something you shoot up, it's taking pictures, right? Yeah. And you're getting great vacation pics, right? But these have become weapons, right? I don't want to say weapons of war, but they have become weapons against our law enforcement. There's all different types of drones. I would really like to see our our Border Patrol have access to anti-drone technology, not just to take down and eliminate these types of drones, but also we could tap into the drones. We can bring them down without harming the hardware of those drones. We can get GPS coordinates. We sometimes can get facial recognition so we can identify who these bad guys are. And that's what this HCR is attempting to do, is bring Texas, bring our local entities, our federal agencies, not just coordinated, but up to a 21st century technological advancements.
Wow, that is amazing. And so how would this federal legislation complement what you're trying to do?
Well, so what we see is the federal legislation is very tailored. It talks about some very specific, very important things, right? Obviously, we don't want to purchase these unmanned aircrafts or these drones from, adversaries. We want to be coordinating with allies. And so that's part of what the federal movement has been doing. But also coordinating with local authorities. They're the ones that actually understand what that region looks like, right? They've been, in these areas. They've been surveilling these areas for years. They know where these organized criminals are coming in through, the paths they've used. And so that's why it's important to start having conversations with our local communities. I don't think, the federal government understands these local communities. And the topography of these areas have been compared to areas like where we've been to war, for instance, Afghanistan, right? I mean, this is desert area. And so these people that have known this area, they understand it best. And so we really need coordination between our federal agencies and our local and state agencies so that we can get on the same page, because we have the same enemy, and that's organized crime and cartels.
Man, thank you so much. What's crazy to me is I served as a Border Patrol agent down there, and I was also an infantry officer on Operation Lone Star down there.
Thank you so much for your service.
Oh, thank you. And what was hard is we would actually have drones above us, right above us, and we would contact our tactical operations center and be like, "Hey, do you guys see the drone that is watching over us?" And they're like, "Nope, our systems can't detect it."
What?
Yes. And so you would be operating out there as law enforcement, trying to counter the smuggling operations for the cartels or narcotics smuggling. And our systems currently don't even have the capability to even see the drones in the air. And another thing that's also interesting is what makes Texas different is that you talked about communities. In California, Arizona, and New Mexico, the majority of the border is actually federally owned, federal property.
Absolutely, yes.
Here, over 90% is owned by local citizens. We're now talking about the cartels co-opting or coercing local citizens, like you said, in Afghanistan. This is no different. The Taliban coerced and used the threat of violence against their own citizenry to force them to act how they wanted. And here, the same thing. Our communities that are adjacent to Mexico it's not federal property. It's not state-owned property. It is our own citizenry that is now left defenseless against these cartels that are utilizing drones, not just for the ability to gain surveillance over the area, but like you said, they've been weaponizing this against even their own farmers, again, like the avocado trade.
Yes, I when you're talking about this, it's reminding me a lot of conversations I had with different personnel that I met, whether it was Chief Chavez, who told me that these organized criminals, these cartel members, as soon as these drones go up for sale on the internet, they are purchasing as many as they can. And we've seen, I think the numbers were over 1,000 drone infiltrations a month, something like 24,000 drone infiltrations. I mean, when you say that they're right above you, they're above all the time. And so when I hear things like we only had one drone for 200 miles, we cannot be, just like we can't be outmanned, we can't be outdroned. And these cartels, these organized criminals, they are going there purchasing them, whether they're online or wherever they're purchasing them, they're using them against our Border Patrol, against our law enforcement officers. And the other thing that you mentioned about the private land, I think that's what makes Texas great, right? Yeah. We do have so much personal, private property. But I think that that's why we also need to make investments in our border communities. And I was thrilled to support Governor Abbott in his effort to help us get some of that $11 billion that we as Texas taxpayers have spent in securing our southern border. I mean, it is the federal responsibility to help us protect our southern border, specifically from cartels and criminals. And so that's why I think that investments like this are so worth it, because it's, these drones are relatively inexpensive. That's why the cartels and organized criminals are able to access so many of them, right? There's different types of cartels, whether we're talking about surveillance, whether we're talking about ones that can do like night vision, there things like that. And we have what we've seen, which essentially have become weaponized, exploding, things like that. So I'm very proud to carry HCR 98. I'm excited that it's actually made it to the House calendar. I think, we think of the legislature 140 days. We don't have that much time, and we don't always get it right. A lot of times people say, nope, the less that we're there, the better it is. But I think that this shows that we are concerned with protecting and securing not only our constituents, but our nation's sovereignty. And, I'm hoping to get full support and make sure that, our federal government understands that we're out here doing the best that we can, but we need coordination and we need support.
Yes, ma'am. And I want to let you know that the Texas Public Policy Foundation and my team specifically, we are in full support of this bill. This bill is amazing. And when I was law enforcement or even the military down there, this bill would have allowed us to be able to counter the cartels in their operations, and where the federal government either can't or doesn't have the capability or capacity to do so. And that's where the state needs to step up, and just like you're stepping up. So I want to thank you for this. This is amazing. Now, what is the next step? After this resolution, what is the next step, and how can Texans support this bill?
Well, I'm very lucky. This bill is being heard on the House floor for second and third reading. It's going to make its way over to the Senate. I expect to gain bipartisan support in the Senate for this initiative as well. And this is going to become part of federal and state record, right? I hope that this is going to start building more relationships between our state and our federal partners. This is going to be the first step in making sure that we are creating a 21st century border, that our federal partners, those four agencies that you mentioned, the Department of Energy can come in and help support these initiatives as well. We're going to need to get as many of these different types of drones as possible. We're going to need to get them in the hand of Border Patrol, Operation Lone Star agents. Our local law enforcement as well are going to need access to this type of infrastructure. And so I think that it's very, very, it's a first step to creating something that I think is going to show our constituents that, government can work. And when we partner up with our federal allies and our state allies, we can actually really impact our local communities.
Ma'am, thank you so much. Thank you so much for showing up today. This is the layout, and we're so excited for you to completely lay out not only your bill, but the reason why behind it. Thank you so much for spending your time. I know that you have to run back. As you just said, this is being heard today. And so please, for those that are watching, please watch. You can watch online. You can watch the bill being laid out online and being voted on today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your service, and let's get to work.
Yeah, let's get to work.